Hello and welcome. This is Litt on Sunday and my name is Litt. On this program this week and every week, we bring you news headlines and take a deeper look at some of the most important ones affecting the Asian community. In today's program, we'll be looking at the unsolved Asian murders in the UK. We'll also be looking at the popularity of Asian speed dating, which is taking grip in the Asian community. And towards the end of the program, we'll have a chat with our guest, Lord Desai. But first, let's have a look at the other news headlines in the week. The government has published plans for a radical overhaul of the health service, saying a patient-centred NHS was a deep step closer to reality. Under the plans, GPs will be handed the bulk of the 100 billion health budget to buy in services for patients, and a new NHS commissioning board will oversee the process. The bill has attracted widespread criticism from unions and policy experts, worried that the reforms are too soon. But the ministers have hit back at the critics, saying change is a necessity, not an option. The Home Office has said that the controversial US pastor Terry Jones has been excluded from the UK for the public good. The pastor had been invited to the UK to give an address to the right-wing group England is Ours in Milton Keynes. Mr. Jones gained international attention for threatening to burn a copy of the Quran outside his church in the US on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. A Home Office spokesperson said the government opposed extremism in all its forms. The government is preparing to scale back plans to give the right to vote to 1,000 prisoners serving sentences of under 4 years. Ministers now hope to limit the right to those sentenced to less than a year and are prepared to take the risk of being sued. David Cameron recently said giving inmates the vote made him feel ill, but he warned that the government faced paying out more than £160 million in compensation if it did not do so. Ministers proposed changing the law in prisoners' voting rights following a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights. We have no doubt that as the lawyers on no win, no fee are currently chasing ambulances, now they will start visiting prisons in order to get more employment out of the state. The latest unemployment figures make a grim reading for the Chancellor, George Osborne. The number of jobless rose to more than 2 million in the last 3 months. The report suggests that the UK economy is not growing fast enough to bring down unemployment. The latest figures show that inflation hits 3.7 in this month. The figures was much higher than expected and has also pushed up by rising cost of petrol, energy and food. New fathers will be offered a much extended paternity leave under plans outlined by the Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg. It means a man could take a maximum of 6 months to look after a newborn child. Current rules allow men to take 2 weeks of paternity leave, but the business leaders have described the plans as a complete nightmare, and small businesses fear the impact could be disastrous. A review could see Prince William's daughter as Queen. Changes to the law on succession to the throne, which would give any daughter of Prince William the same right as his sons, are being considered. Labour MP Keith Vaz called for the Act to be modernised to bring the monarchy in line with other royal families in Europe. America and China pledged stronger ties during Chinese president's US visit. US President Mr. Obama had pressed his Chinese counterpart on trade, currency and human rights during talks at the White House. Mr. Obama hailed relations with China, saying that the two countries have a huge stake in each other's success. The fact that America owes China $1 trillion has nothing to do with better relations. In fact, Hillary Clinton very recently said, how do you get tough with your banker? And assuming we meant that now US sees China as their banker. It has been 15 years since the owner of Des Perdes newspaper was murdered, and to date the killers have not been found. This is not the only case where people have got away with murder to date. Today we are citing 6 killings where no one has been charged. Raj Mehta takes a deeper look.
Mr. Tarsim Singh Purewal was aged 61 when he was murdered in Southall. Mr. Purewal was shot with a lethal shot outside his office whilst closing up for the day, which made it Tuesday evening around 6 p.m. Mr. Purewal was the chief editor at Des Perdes, the weekly Punjabi newspaper based in Southall. At the time in 1995, this was a case which drew much attention. The Committee for the Protection of Journalists have, along with the current editor, Mr. Gurbakh Singh, commented on the possibilities that his murder is linked to his journalistic work, and in particular links to the Air India jet bombing case in 1985, which Mr. Purewal was linked to, and it is said he had information on the alleged suspects. Mr. Gurbuk Singh, the current chief editor, showed us where Mr. Purwal was killed.
At that tragic time, tragic evening, he was just locking his door, get the shutter and keep the keys to the doors, and as he get it straight like that, somebody came from, maybe from the park side or from the roadside, came, and maybe some birds with him, and don't know what has been done, what they were with these, some discussions or anything like that. Nobody knows that. But police say that he was shot in his left side chest, and he was just at this spot.
Alongside Mr. Purwal, one of his colleagues who he was in correspondence with was also murdered. He was also a journalist whose name was Mr. Tara Singh Hayal. Both journalists were critical of fundamentalism within Punjab. Since 1995, it has been 16 years, and the unfortunate case of Mr. Purwal's death is still unsolved, and there is still no closure on his murder. Mr. Purwal's case is not the only unsolved murder. There are other cases too. In 2003, police arrested family members of British Shafila Iftikhar Ahmed, aged 17, who was found murdered in the River Kent. This murder is being linked to the notion of an honour killing. The police had said at the time that her body was deliberately hidden. Shafila went missing, and she was soon reported to be missing by her teachers. Shafila's body was found a week later in a decomposed state. It could be questioned that how is it that her murder or murderers have not been brought to justice? Was this an honour killing or not? As yet, there has not been any light shed on how and why young Shafila's life ended, and the case remains unsolved. In 2009, the murder of Michelle Samarawira, aged 35, took place in Walthamstow, East London. At around 1:15 a.m. on a Saturday evening, Michelle walked her way back to her boyfriend's address after popping out to the local supermarket. Michelle was raped, then strangled, appallingly, in a children's play area. When Michelle's murdered body was found, she was partially clothed. Around the time of Michelle's murder, there were shockingly had been 2 other attacks in the same area. An Asian man was seen walking into the supermarket shortly after Michelle was filmed on CCTV. The police are still trying to trace this man, although the case of Miss Michelle Samarawira is still unsolved till date. Another high-profile case is the murder of Dr. Imran Farooq, who was a Pakistani politician. This case developed into a high-profile case for a number of reasons. Dr. Imran Farooq was part of the opposition party, Pakistan MQM party, which he was one of the founders of. Mr. Farooq was murdered at the age of 50 by being stabbed many times near his home in Edgware, and was found to have injuries to the head after he was said to have been attacked by bricks. He died soon after the vicious attack. He was living in the UK after self-exiling himself due to the danger of his life in Pakistan. The case became even further high-profile when Scotland Yard passed on the case to the Counter-Terrorism Command to investigate the international political leads on the murder of Dr. Imran Farooq. One person has been arrested and he is on bail. The case is still pending, although remains unsolved. The latest in unsolved murders is in April 2010. The murder of Amir Siddiqui, whose murder was frantic and shocking, with 2 masked men having set upon him in balaclavas and attacked him after he opened the front door on a Sunday around 1:40 p.m. He was confronted by these men who had a sharp-bladed weapon and was stabbed to death in front of his parents, who tried to stop the attack and were also stabbed in the process. They all went to hospital with injuries, and Amir later died. Amir was a public schoolboy and was doing his A-levels at the age of 17. The case has 2 suspects on trial, and there is another wanted suspect, although the case for now remains unsolved. In another case, we spoke with Jagdish Singh, whose sister was murdered in an honour killing, and whose case still remains unsolved.
Sarjeet, as many will know, was murdered as part of an honour killing by her in-law family from Hayes in December 1998. Her case came to the headlines over the last few years with a conviction of her mother-in-law and her husband in the British courts in 2007. The actual killing took place in Punjab, North India. The actual killers in India still remain free due to the failure by the Indian justice system and the Indian police system to take any positive action on the case. And therefore, whilst our battle for justice in the UK has been completed successfully after 9 years of struggle, our battle with the Indian authorities, Indian government and the Indian police still remains to be completed. And the case remains ongoing there. It's tragic that the Indian authorities, the Indian government, the Indian police, with their usual bad practices, have failed to take any positive action on this, and it's a desperately bad indictment of the Indian justice system that a crime that has taken place on your territory has been convicted in the UK courts, and yet your own courts and your own police and your own system is completely neglecting that crime. What more of a cruel irony and what more of a disgraceful injustice than that?
It is astonishing that the British police, with all the powers of arrest and the advanced technologies, are still unable to solve and arrest the culprits. And more so, how can such a thing happen in England, where Scotland Yard is seen as an internationally leading reputable police organisation? Should not all society at large be protected from such tyranny? We wanted to know the public's response to the issue of murder and what they think about the police and their efforts in countering the problem of unsolved murder crimes.
Well, I think they should investigate them further, and they shouldn't put them on hold and just investigate them until the outlook comes and ask as many people as they can.
ਜੇ ਤੇ ਏਸ਼ੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਕੇਸ ਹੋਏ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਬੋਦਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੀ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਨ ਦਿਓ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ। ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਹੋਏ ਤਾਂ ਝੱਟ ਹੱਲ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਸਾਊਥ ਹਾਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਏਸ਼ੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਮਰਡਰ ਕੇਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਸੋਲਵ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੀ।
Police need to step up and take it more seriously.
नहीं, मेन रोल तो पुलिस का ही है, उनको इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना चाहिए ना प्रॉपर्ली।
शॉर्ट आउट तो हो ही सकता है, कोई भी केस है, कोई ऐसा तो है ही नहीं जिसका हल नहीं निकल सकता। जो गवर्नमेंट चाहे तो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं।
I would imagine that in terms of ratio, a lot more murders are solved than unsolved.
गोरों का केस ये सही जल्दी आसानी से करते हैं, इंडियन का नहीं करते, एशियन का नहीं करते, अफगानिस्तान जैसे भी जो भी हैं। तो ये बात तो कुछ हद तक मैं मान नहीं सकता। जो भी होता है ठीक है, मतलब यहाँ की पुलिस इनके फेवर में ही बात करूँगा।
They should have clear measures, like they should be able to track them who does those kind of active killings, and it's very bad. It's a shame on the legal system that if they are unsolved.
Well, he should be solving it like the rest of the world.
We asked New Scotland Yard in London why murder is such a problem and why there are so many Asian unsolved murders. They provided us with a statement and have responded by saying, "We can reassure the public that we will fully investigate and exhaust all possible lines of investigation to solve each and every homicide we deal with. While approximately 90% of homicides are detected, we are determined to solve each and every one and bring the offenders to justice. Unsolved cases continue to be fully investigated, but in some cases it can take many months or even years before charges are brought." So that's what they had to say. It remains to be seen whether these cases are solved in the future. However, for now, these cases remain unsolved. Raj Mehta, Sunrise Television.